You're listening to The People's Pitch, the official podcast of Minneapolis City Soccer Club, brought to you by FootballStadiumPrints.com. Let's start the show.
And as I talked about just a couple minutes ago, as Joe Watt stands over this one, he appears to be the one taking the penalty here. This is a huge confidence booster if you're a Duluth.
Worst case scenario for City right here.
And it stopped! Yes! And it stopped!
Totally redeems himself.
Matt Elder redeeming himself. Oliver with the right foot. The shot of the goal!
Oliver!
And Justin Oliver will break the scoreless tie. And it is 1-0 Minneapolis City. It's Hutton now on the offense with the left foot. And it is now 2-0 Minneapolis City.
Good finish.
Nick Hutton taking his quick victory lap.
Hello again, soccer friends. This is The People's Pitch, the official podcast of your Minneapolis City Soccer Club. I'm your host, John, with my riding super high on his first ever lower league eCup victory partner, the Nate Morales. Nate, it happened, man. Have the champagne celebrations stopped yet?
John, if the feed cuts out, it's because the phone fell into the tub, and the tub is pain. No, I mean, I'm taking it one victory at a time. I'm not getting too excited. It was fun.
We'll talk about it a little bit deeper here in a little bit.
We will talk about it this week. We've got a heavy show of kind of what we like to call the hodgepodge of soccer stuff to talk about. We've got the eCup debut win for me. We're going to talk a little bit about the futures. They've been selected and they're ready to start their season. We started to see some of the kits. So that's pretty cool. They start their season next week, and we're going to talk about some key players to watch out for that the staff is really excited about. And then there's a U.S. Soccer Federation presidential election coming up, and I think it's basically throwing a that's all about just throwing a dart at what shitbag is less full. So we'll talk about that, I suppose. Let's get this potpourri of soccer talk going. First, John, I'm going to hijack the show. I know we've got a whole show coming up probably next week. We're planning on talking about and digging in more about what the hell's going on in St. Paul. But I have to ask.
Our annual Minnesota United Bitch Fest.
At least once a year.
Yeah, it happens maybe twice a year. Usually once before the season starts, right around this time when they're building their roster, and then once when.
What are they doing? And this is no exception. I got to ask, John, did you see that Abu Danladi re-signing?
Of course I did. I did.
The team let our first ever first round pick, our first number one overall pick go in 2019 by leaving him open to the expansion draft because he was so valuable, apparently. He's a mediocre striker that, by the end of his tenure at Minnesota United was flubbing shots left and right, and it was enough to get his ass sent down to Madison for a game, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, one real big game in Madison. I think he only played like 60 minutes.
Yeah, and so here we are 2-ish years later, and Nashville did not renew his contract, and so he's back, having really never made an impact there at Nashville. I think 2 goals in 2020 and 1 goal this last year. I don't get it, man. Why would we want him back?
So here's my take. Number one, I do have to feel for the guy a little bit. I think being an off-injured striker, we'll just put it at that. I mean, that's not going outside the lines here. That's kind of calling. It is what it is. He's an oft-injured striker. He was oft-injured in college. When not injured and in a comfortable environment with low pressure, very dynamic and a good role-playing kind of secondary striker to someone else. Maybe that hold-up play guy where he can kind of play off that person. Definitely not the person to draft to be the face of your franchise right off the bat.
Turns out.
For multiple reasons, some that I just mentioned. So the pressure that he had on him to perform was a lot. And also you're in the shadow of when he came in, that whole Christian Ramirez saga. A guy who was a performer, was always the guy with the chip on his shoulder, but always performing. I think his goals his goals per game average was like 1 in every like 2.5 games. So you're looking at a guy who produces, and then you're supposed to like now be the person who was then selected, very high value selection in a draft, and then you have that guy who's producing, and then you're not producing, then you get injured, and a lot of pressure. So I'll give him credit there, but I think this is just another instance, and we'll talk like we said, we'll talk about it at length on a different show, but it's just another instance of like who's really making the soccer decisions at Minnesota United. Like, I can't believe that the coaching staff, like, just all of a sudden was like, hey, you know what we need? We need to bring this guy back in, and he's going to be different this time. Because players
we think we missed something last time.
Mm-hmm. Like, players at the highest levels, specifically outside of the United States, but we've seen it in the United States, they don't change drastically. Like, the Jamie Vardys of the world, like, don't happen all the time, right? Like, so it's like it's 1 in a million basically, and probably even larger than that, probably 1 in like 100 million that happens. I don't think Abu Danladi falls in that category, but if you're looking at him to bring into the fold a guy who will be a willing bench player, who will feature more for Minnesota United too, who might be willing to help out the younger strikers like Patrick Weah, like find their way in the league. Great signing. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. He's going to end up being the person who will always be the guy who didn't perform the first time. So I think it's a bad idea. So again, it goes back to like who pulled the trigger on thinking this was good. The coaching staff, I don't believe that it had to be them. I don't know. I don't believe this is a decision that maybe Amos would make. Amos seems to be the guy who is leading the efforts for bringing in guys like Quintero, Maria, even though they're bringing him back in. I think that experiment failed a little bit, but he was of good pedigree. Mentonair,
and at least with Maria, it's like we brought him in. It was the COVID season, the weird one, the MLS's back tournament, and all that stuff.
He got hurt.
He got hurt, but he was decent leading up to that, right? And then it's just like, how is it really worth fighting to work your way back in that kind of environment where you're not going to you're playing in a weird situation?
Yeah. I totally get it. But then, if you look at the other signs like Mentonair, Boxall, who else do you have in there? Gregush, Lode. Like these guys that are like performers, like those seem to be like they kind of speak to me like Amos McGee signings. So who else is making the decisions? I don't know. But my last stat, what's that? We're going to talk in depth about.
Yeah, we got
another day. We got more of a show to go. The last stat that I saw on that revolves around Danladi is the rest of the top 10 players who followed him in his 2017 draft class have a collective 65 national team career appearances, and he has yet to finish a full MLS season healthy. So unless you're bringing this guy in to do those things I mentioned, this is a bad idea. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it's a bummer to me that I
feel for the guy. I feel for the guy, actually.
Yeah. Would have preferred. It just felt like such a no-brainer to say, like, we're a brand new team. There is a consensus top 5 pick in a local player that year, Jackson Ewell. There's, you know what I mean? And like, we've got Christian Ramirez, we've got Miguel Ibarra on the roster. We thought we were pretty comfortable there. I mean, I don't know. It just makes sense to go with like, take a page out of the Minnesota Twins book and just pick the local kid and see how he pans out. And you know he's going to sell tickets.
Yeah,
and it turns out we would have had a men's national team player on our hands, but instead we've got Abu Danladi 3.0. So we'll see. It's weird, John. Like, despite having this coach who's known as the striker whisperer, United has had like terrible instincts and a terrible record around the strikers. Like, it feels like Heath made his reputation on the back of like Dom Dwyer, who is one of the biggest flameouts and one of the biggest assholes in American soccer recently. So I don't know. Maybe that asshole trait is indicative of the problem over across the river, and I think that's what we're going to talk more about next week. But for now, I got a fat ass dub to talk about, dude.
Yeah, you do. My last thing I'll say about that is they just also drafted another striker who was
also injured.
Yeah, injured in college. So apparently history repeats itself. But anyways, we do have a fat W to talk about. We were one of the founding members of the lower league eCup 3 years ago when COVID killed real soccer. And being part of this cup, no matter how silly it feels to say or to hear me say, it really helped us through scary parts of the pandy to give ourselves and our fans like something city to rally around, right? Like we like had a thing. It was like we're gonna do this. We're gonna be part of a FIFA soccer tournament and see how it goes. Flash forward after Jonah and Max both made their respective final matches. And we seem to perfect, I believe, how to broadcast digital soccer games. Our little ball of joy, Nate Morales, is our contender this year in the 2022 eCup. And like I noted in the beginning, was a victor in his first match. Nate, you bested the representative from NISA's Maryland Bobcats by a score of 3-1.
I did.
First things first, what was your early perception of the match and how you were feeling going into it?
I was actually really nervous, John. Like
I could tell talking to you
for a couple days and leading up to it, right up to when it started. Like I just kept thinking about how, I've crushed kids online 6-0, but I've been totally rocked by the same score, right? So I really had no idea what this competition was going to look like, and more than anything, I just did not want to get my ass waxed in front of the internet. Like. Show up and just get destroyed would be a little bit embarrassing.
Well, that's where my next question comes. Like, we're doing something a little different this year with not having a player, but rather a member of the staff carrying the weight of the badge, I guess you could say, in this cup. Did you feel obligated to carry the winning torch that we've had both on and off the field? It sounds like it.
I don't know about that. I mean, I think it was more just like I wanted to make sure that my pride didn't get hurt too bad. Like, you guys had to know what you were getting into when you drafted me. It's like I'm a millennial at the top edge of that millennial age spectrum who drowns his stressful job in whiskey and escapes into video game soccer. So it's not like I've got like a family, and I don't know. There's just like you just know that there's no way that.
Well,
but it was a good choice to put me in the second division.
Well, low-hanging fruit is like we let Jonah or Max, even though Max is not with us anymore, he's always with us. Let one of those two play again, or open it up to a few of the other players that play. But it just made sense to move to progress in 3 years of doing this to like try something different. And you are our try something different. And I think it works. I mean, expectations, no disrespect, are low, right?
Yeah.
We're playing the second division. But you did your job, man. So next question, how was it having me mic'd up, honestly? Like, was it a distraction? Because I really did my best not to get in your way. And I kind of feel, it adds a little bit of a different spin on what we've done in the past, because before it was just kind of like two of us talking about what someone else is doing. And now it's like someone was invited into your living room and the two of us are just drinking beers, playing, having a good time.
Yeah, it was actually super fun. I think next week I would say I'm totally open to you asking more like questions about gameplay, talking to me about that tactical approach, because I was actually pretty proud of my prep work for this one. I think, the more we got to talk about, hey, Nate, what are you thinking here? Like when you would give me pointers like, maybe you want to transition out of the clear that ball faster, transition into the counter faster. Things like that are like good to hear, because you get kind of stuck in a rut sometimes just trying to keep in the game. So that was super helpful.
I specifically mentioned that because you had 3 really bad turnovers in your defensive third in a row, and I was like, maybe it's time to kick the ball into the parking lot.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
Let's get out of here.
Right? Like you get stuck in that rut. Like here's what I'm trying to do. Here's what I'm trying to do. Here's what I'm trying to do, and it's just like change the script. So I thought that was valuable. So keep it up. I liked it.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad my coaching tutelage could help. We'll talk a little bit more later in the show about my coaching tutelage. But 3-1 is a good performance, so kudos to you, sir. Is there anything that you learned in round one that you want to take into round two or maybe adjust?
Yeah, well, I want to point out that like that first goal was scored in like the first 30 seconds of the game.
Oh yeah, there goes
right?
the nerves get amped up to 1,000 at that point.
Mm-hmm. But I feel like I settled in, and I think the 3 goals to close it out were pretty respectable, and I don't think he had many decent chances after after I got caught off guard, I think, really, by that weird header. And I'm going to say that was totally like the computer's fault. When you look at like the AI and how every center back was in the opposite corner of the box from Sadio Mane, who was able to just like pounce and head it in, whatever. I'm not going to complain. I'm done complaining about that. But I think what I have to learn about is like speed of play is a little weird. It's a little slow. So I got to adjust to that. I got to work on my dribbling, and I got to work on defending the dribble. I think that's.
Yeah, not diving in early. That was one of the things I was going to mention, but that's the last thing someone wants to hear when they're playing FIFA is like, stop diving in. You're like, well, fuck you. It's so fast. I'm trying to get the ball.
Exactly. And the last thing I'd say, John, is like, I got to score more bangers. Like I took a lot of shots from the top of the box, and it just, one hit the post and the others were saved. And I just gotta, if I'm going to take those shots, they either have to be in, or I got to take a more high percentage shot. So that's it.
I'm in for bangers, man.
Yeah. I think next week's going to be interesting. This American Outlaws guy won 3-1 also. So depending on how I do against that, I can probably lock in a knockout stage berth. And, but if he rocks my ass, I might have to worry about like the Delaware. I might have to worry about what Delaware Rising will bring. But if I can contend with him on a pretty even level, I think I have a pretty good shot the following week against Delaware Rising to get out of this group stage.
I mentioned on the broadcast, man, 1 win, 1 draw, 1 ass kicking. That's all you need.
The U.S. men's national team way.
Yeah, it is. We'll talk about the U.S. men's national team, the federation here in a little bit. But if you're interested in checking out the match next week on January 18th, which happens to be my birthday, as well as Kevin Costner's birthday and Magnum PI's birthday, Tom Selleck.
Nice.
You can do so by hopping on our Twitch channel. It's twitch.tv/MPLS City SC, where we will get the pregame started around 8:15, and then Nate gets going around 8:30 for the match versus a representative, as he mentioned, from American Outlaws. And we're pleased to announce that we're going to have a futures kit giveaway contest that viewers of the match can participate in. So tune in, get involved. Keep on the lookout on both the club and our show's Twitter handles in the next couple of days for more information on how you can get involved in that.
Yeah. A few episodes ago, John, we were graced with the presence of Jeremiah Johnson, who is the architect of the Futures program. Talked a little bit about year 1, and he touched on some updates to what's going to happen in year 2 that is upon us here. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to that, you should go back and check that one out. And they went through trials near the end of November, around Thanksgiving time, and the player pool has been selected, and they're just days away from really boots hitting the turf for the 2022 class of the Minneapolis City Futures. John, you have talked a lot with the staff about some of the things that they're excited about this year, as well as some highlights from the trial process. What is the word? What are you hearing around anticipation about getting this next class of the Futures going?
Yeah, so I did get the chance to catch up with them, Nate. So it was super interesting to like hear what they have to say. I think the real different sentiment from the group this season is like there's just like a feeling of excitement that wasn't quite there in year 1, and I think that's I think it's less a slight on the inaugural group of players that were in the program, and more of just how excited they are. Not only just about the group of players that's in for year 2, but just how they can build off of the success of the first campaign. Because I think that like the first year was like all the stress was on like, is this going to work?
Yeah.
And are we going to fail? And failure is in our club is not an option, right? Like a lot of people say that, but like we truly mean it. Like we don't ever want to fail at anything we do. We will take those teachable moments and those learnings and turn them into success eventually, but we don't want to outright fail. And I think that Jeremiah and the coaching staff maybe had a little bit of that failure on mind. And that's not a disrespect at all either. It's just a reality. Like, this could go wrong and we don't know what to expect. We just got to dive in and see what happens. And the worst could happen. And I think we lean on that a little bit too much in society, like the negative, right? Instead of like looking at all the positives. So I didn't get the sense that they were like, it was all negative in the first year by any means, but understanding that, like, talking to them, they're just excited. There's just this like feeling of like they can't wait to get started, and like they want to talk about the players and like this guy and that guy, where he came from, what they think he can do in the club when he progresses into the senior level. So it's really cool to talk to them about it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Is this year they know it's a successful model. They understand how it's going to go and how it's going to benefit the players, and so really there's a lot of excitement up front around like, these guys are already really good, and I'm already excited to see what they're going to do, and I really can't wait to see what happens in the summer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we talked with Jeremiah that the futures pool is going to be kind of reselected or retrialed for the UPSL spot. So, I mean,
Nice.
if I'm a 17, 18-year-old in the area, and I'm not currently in like an MLS next situation across the river, I'm really looking at trying to do whatever I can to get on that UPSL team. I mean, from a ability to progress your game, man, like, I wish I had that when I was 17, 18. I mean, I would have done everything I could. You know, even if I didn't make it during trials, I would have figured out how to get better quick and try to get, back into their good graces. But we talked to them a little bit about the trials last year versus this year in the player selection process. And first things first, and really what was a shared sentiment, is the number of trialists that were out this year. Can't quite put a finger on, excuse me, can't quite put a finger on why, other than the streets talk, man. And I think that the word of mouth on how this really is the place for guys from 16 to 19, like I just talked about, that are not in the clutches of MLS Next, and like how this is like the place to be. And the stats kind of speak for themselves. In 2020, all said and done, 93 trialists, from the guys that initially came out. I think there were probably 70 some trialists that came out for the initial trials, and then the remainder came like through the open trial process, or just like off the street guys, like guys like Yasik that came in and were like, hey, I want to play, and then he came out for a training session. They're like, you can play, come on in. But there were 93 total trialists in 2021, 130. So a significant jump there. And then what I was also told is that they had reached capacity for trials. So 130 was the cap, and they still had more guys that were trying to come in. But they had to push those trialists to the additional opportunities that we have as a club, which comes by way of open trials. And that I was told brought in an extra 40 players who are Futures Age eligible. Like I said, like the word of mouth must have hit the streets, because how do the staff between what Jeremiah does with recruiting, with what Eli and Brendan did by going to like almost every high school game ever this last fall, and from some of the stuff that, like, I shouldn't even say that I did. I mean, I didn't do a ton, but I did, watch some games and identify a few players, but I didn't do nearly as much as those guys did. But having 170 players with interest come in, that's something went right. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like from looking at, I think United 2 was excited about 80 people being at their trials, and I thought that feels low.
Yeah.
So I mean, I couldn't believe it. When I went to I think I went to Group A, night one of Group A trials, just to kind of see what was going on, and that was it was full. It was packed, and all those kids were excited to be there. All those kids were good. The energy out there for what the opportunities that the Futures program has must be high in the soccer community, which is.
Yeah, so then you boil that down, and 50 players were selected
50.
for
Okay.
for the program. So a lot of no's were thrown out there, but a significant amount of yeses. So we'll see. And one thing I do want to note is that when a player isn't selected in the features program, and this kind of goes into our open trials as well, the staff really looks at how that player or that individual handles the no. You know, if you get the guy that tells you to go F yourself, you're like, yep, never going to talk to that guy again. But if you handle yourself in a a trial environment the right way when you don't get selected,
Mm-hmm.
there's an opportunity that you weren't selected for like one specific reason. And that reason could be like player A who got selected offers that one thing the coaching staff was looking for, and you were player B. And if player A ever goes down with injury, moves away, whatever it may be, you're the next man up.
Yeah.
So if you don't make the trial right away, handle yourself properly, and there's a very high chance that when numbers are low for a training session because of whatever reasons, your phone might ring, and that's your way in, and then that's your opportunity to seize. So definitely, if anyone's out there listening who got to know that's your way in. So
Not only that, but I remember even Aiden O'Driscoll, who didn't make the main club one of his first years, took his feedback to heart, right?
Yeah.
Was able to work on that specifically, come back year 2 and make the team. I think he made MC2, right? So that's also important to hear that the coaches do actually give analysis on everyone that was there. There's going to be some notes on you. There's going to be something that you'll be able to walk away from this and be able to work on. And that's important, especially when you're talking about guys that are 16 to 18 years old.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next one was, they talked about a few players of interest, and I mean, there's more than just 3. They get, the consensus was around 3. The list probably was much longer, and we cut it down to 3. But we've had quite a few prospects from year 1 last season that were super exciting when they came in and made the jump to the UPSL team. Whether you're talking about Zach Susi, Yasik, Ben Schliemann, Jesse Juarez, and Jake Popkin, to name a few. They, the staff tossed out a few names for the season as well.
Yeah, so I'll talk about some of these guys. I've got the list in front of me, and I'm gonna the pronunciation on this, John. You're gonna kill me.
But we'll get started. I tossed it to you, so I didn't butcher these names.
So the first guy is a guy named Sidike Jabate, who did I get that right?
Yeah, you're right. So Sidike, actually, if people, the name sounds familiar for a couple of reasons. Number one being that he's a new futures player. He was Mr. Soccer this fall at Park Center High School, comes by way of Maplebrook Soccer Club. He also played on that Granite City UPSL team as a high schooler. And if you remember that playoff game,
it was a close game
where Yasik scored the game winner in overtime, I thought Sidike was the best player on the field, or one of the best players on the field as a high schooler. I remember talking to Jeremiah, who I was sitting next to at the time. I was like, man, who's that guy? And Brendan Doyle, who's on our future staff, immediately interjected, was like, he's a high school player, and next year I'm doing anything I can to get him into the futures program. And I was like, yeah, please do, because that guy will definitely be one to watch. He's already received call-ups to the first team trainings this winter. And from what the staff says, he's kind of a force to contend with whenever he finds himself on the field, with his ability to create and score goals, which we love to hear. And you kind of leave your head scratching a little bit, like, how did he even see that, pull that off? Because kind of can do the spectacular. So a really exciting prospect that the team is looking for. And obviously first team coach MVB has already noticed that maybe it's time to bring him in and see what he can do with some of the senior guys.
Nice. The next guy we want to talk about is someone that I'm actually excited to see here too, because there was a strong contingent of Karen players that were at the trial that I went to. And I thought that was amazing to see. I think there were at least 10 guys.
Yeah, maybe even more than that. Yeah.
And I think that's all coming from our partnership with them. The success, of course, of Ekuse. So the guy we want to focus on right now is Ethao Mong.
Yeah, something like that.
Mhm.
I wouldn't have gone with that pronunciation, but we will. But he's also new to the program, and I'll honestly say this. So Jonah Garcia, his day job is assistant coach and head of recruiting for Augsburg University, and on the first day of tryouts, I told him that this guy, like, figure out a way to give this guy whatever he needs to get into your program. Like, I feel like he just a difference maker. He's a defender, lockdown defender. He plays like a grown man, and within his age group, he comes by way of St. Paul Humboldt High School and Blackhawks Soccer Club, and he, again, like Sadike, already been called up to some first team trainings, and really no surprise that he helped his high school team to the state finals this fall. And from what I heard, his thing is just clairvoyant like vision in his awareness that he brings to the defensive back line, which is something that is an intangible. Nate, like the best of the best in the back, they're not just ball winners. They're not just good defenders that take a ball off of an attacker, but they can read a game, and it's really hard to teach. So I know that they're really, really excited about him.
Nice. The next guy is a kid named Parker Flynn, another new player to Futures. Could be anywhere. Could play anywhere, really.
Yeah. So I think he's a transplant from I believe Texas, somewhere down south. But his family moved up here to Minnetonka. And he from go, like, at the high school level at Minnetonka, comes through us through Tonka Fusion Elite, just like an impact type player. As with the other two, already received call-ups into the first team training. And he's kind of that Swiss Army knife that we've seen that we like about players. You kind of put them in different spots and they can kind of do different things. But typically our jack of all trades type players have been more guys that we can move back defensively, where he's one that you can move into the attacking end from the middle of the field. Super high technical ability. He's got a ton of speed that can be deployed on a wing or up top. And I mean, he can change a game. He's definitely one of those true game changers, whether it's scoring a goal or it's setting someone up. So all three of these guys, Nate, are, as we mentioned, are in senior training in some fashion, and are bright future, no pun intended, for the club.
Nice. And these guys are all going to be led by a new group of mentor coaches. Last year, the Futures team each had a mentor coach, someone that was involved with the city organization that was able to, that as not a full-time coach was able to still step in and do give the kids a little guidance. This year we've got 4 more teams and 4 more mentor coaches who will be leading the youngins to glory.
Well, I mentioned last year the 4 mentor coaches were Will Kidd, Aaron Olson, Joe Sway, and Jonah Garcia. So not a bad pedigree from a senior team perspective to be able to lead a 7-a-side team, right? Like those are some names that have been around the club for a while. Mm-hmm. Also have been just in the game forever. And have an understanding that they can kind of drop down onto these players. But as listeners know, I stepped in last year to help start the season coaching the team because Jonah was set up with school and work for the first part of the season. And somehow, Nate, I've been cast responsible for the Wanderers getting relegated because they finished in last place. But I push the blame on Jonah. Like that team in our first week, I think we got beat like 8-0 or 8-1 or 9-1 or something like that. I think it was definitely a goal differential around 8.
Yeah.
But
I feel like people might just be trying to get under your skin.
Yes, and they are. They've done their job.
It works.
It worked. But after that, we tied the first place team, and then we beat the second place team, and then I handed the team off to Jonah, and then look what happened. So I don't think it was my fault, but I will take credit for them getting relegated. But this year's group of coaches, is another great one. First and foremost, Jonah Garcia is coming back for a second year. I say that equates to him trying to recruit players for Augsburg.
Hey, why not?
More of that than being, but why not, right? It's at his disposal. Might as well do it. And I know Jonah works really well with the younger group of guys. MC2 player from last season, Derek Ullman, who from an attacking perspective, if you're a young striker, played overseas, and we saw what he could do with working with a younger striker like Cole Schwartz last year and Jacek. So really great to have him in. Tyler David, who joined us during the fall with our friendlies, and is going to be joining us full time. I don't know if I can say that yet, but is planning to join us full time this fall. And I mean, he has a wealth of professional experience. Played with the Des Moines Menace, who obviously isn't professional, but carries a big stick in the lower level soccer world, being a member of the Des Moines Menace. Also played with Union Omaha in USL, and just has decided to stay. We'll call it stateside in Minnesota, and play with City this year, and pursue some things off the field. So really great to have him involved. And yours truly, John Bisworm, is getting a full season in what I like to call my redemption tour, to show them that last season's relegation was indeed not my fault. So I took the call from Jeremiah and said, hey, if you don't have enough coaches, I'd be more than happy to make the investment, because not only do I want to redeem myself, but also I really enjoy working with the younger players. And I feel like it's a good thing to have maybe someone from maybe my seat at more of the top to come down and introduce myself to these guys as one of the founders of the club, and kind of impress some of my soccer knowledge on those guys, and hear them out and understand what they want to do in their soccer journey, and hopefully help them understand that this is a good step for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be great. I think this is a staff that is this group of mentor coaches really have a lot of experience, like you mentioned, as first team players for the Crows. Guys like Derek, guys like Tyler, yourself got a little bit of professional playing experience, a ton of collegiate playing experience here from across the country. I think these guys are going to be participating in a draft for the season's team formation, right? So it's time they're gonna have to pick teams and kind of craft what yep. Which is going to be interesting to see. And I don't know. I'm sure that everyone is gunning for you, John, trying to make you the perennial relegated coach, which would be really funny. Two years in a row would mean that you'd have to earn another fake trophy or something, and maybe some sort of a memento, like a signed futures jersey from all the other players.
No, dude, I'm gonna make sure it's Jonah. I'm gonna make sure that he takes full responsibility. But I think the main thing to think about, Nate, is that, and one of the main focuses that I have as being a mentor coach, is really instilling upon these players like the little things, like update your team snap, don't be late, like all the things that make that we call in the brotherhood, the buy-in that guys have to have in order to make it to the next level. And I think that's a lot of the things. If you look at the other mentor coaches outside of myself, who can just tell them like, hey, this is how it works here. But you look at Tyler, Jonah, and Derek. They're the guys who are always updated on Team Snap. They come early to get warm-ups in. Like they're vocal with everyone, when they're playing, like those little things. And I think that it's great to have this side of the program that Jeremiah has plugged into it, into showing like the younger group, like these guys are playing where you ultimately want to or should want to be. Listen to them. Like they're not just like some blowhard who's getting paid. They're volunteering, and they're doing it because they want to continue within the club and make the club stronger. So I'm a big proponent of this part of it.
Yep. Well, the Futures League is going to kick off in earnest. The 7v7 portion of it will begin in February 14th. And the way that works is 3 group stage games, and they're going to compete in a semifinal and a final. That's gonna lead up to what will then be the UPSL season starting in May. So all games, if you're interested in the futures and you really want to see what these kids can do, all those games will be recorded and put online every week for the fans to watch on YouTube. Definitely for now closed to in-person public viewing, but all of the futures matches from last year are on YouTube, and that shouldn't change, right? So you can check that out at Minneapolis City's YouTube page.
All right, Nate. So we're at the last segment of the show here, and there's a lot to unpack, but we'll try to.
It's kind of a classic old granddad rant.
It is a real good old granddad rant, and I didn't have old granddad. I had Jay Carver today. But we have a federation election. News in the soccer sphere came out last week that it is once again time, friends, when a leader of our country's soccer future is put in charge to further ruin things and delay us catching up with the rest of the world. And the pure shithousery this goes around is so outrageous that you couldn't put like the best people in Hollywood from a writer's room perspective in a room and they'd come out with a story like this. So current president Cindy Parlow Cone will be running for re-election, which is not a shocker because she seems to be the total lapdog of the people who really pull the strings behind the scenes. So why would you not? Why would you put another candidate out there? You just want to put the person you know. So for those of you who don't know her, she's the first ever female president of our federation. But before that, she did have a very decent soccer career. Coming out of North Carolina, she's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. She's part of that storied 1999 World Cup women's winning side. Continued to play pro herself, and then had a brief stint as the head coach of the Portland Thorns, taking them to the title in 2013, and then she was inducted into the U.S. National Soccer Hall of Fame in 2018. So not a bad day in the sunlight, right, Nate? Like, where things go south for old Cindy, and here's where it gets fun. One would think that she'd be the perfect person to advocate for the women's game and the women's team, who she was part of and likely wrapped up. But she was also wrapped up in like the brutal equal pay lawsuit with the federation towards the beginning of her tenure, seeing that she was a member of that national women's program herself and likely had to feel some of the same setbacks, especially when you talk about how the fact that she was part of the program in the 90s and early 2000s. But the same kind of stuff that she likely faced is the same stuff that the current U.S. Women's National Team squad is. So, she seemed like to give a shit for about 30 seconds, stating in her first press conference that she was appointed to the job to be one of to act as the president to apologize for how the old regime responded to that lawsuit. And she specifically stated the offensive assertions made by the federation that do not represent our core values. So
yeah, you should watch that documentary LFG on HBO if you haven't seen it.
Totally should. Well, what followed that like 30 seconds of giving a shit was her completely dismissing the equal pay portion of the lawsuit and saying that the women are well taken care of, even though they have outperformed the men's team on the field and make well under half of what the men do. Instead, here is what they got from her. She specifically stated the deal with the world champion American women and the sport and U.S. soccer governing body calls for better charter flights, hotel accommodations, venue selection, and professional staff support to that of the men's team. So took out the whole equal pay thing and was like, hey, you don't have to fly commercial. You can actually get a better hotel. You don't have to play at a fucking park. And you know what? Everyone but the players, as far as the staff's concerned, will get everything that the men do. So, except for the players. And then she also stated, I hope that the women and their lawyers see that we're taking a new approach. We want the women's team as well as their lawyers to see that we want to move in a different direction. We want to have a different relationship with them. We want to work together. And I think they're starting to see that. And we have to continue down this path. Seems like a real peach, huh, Nate?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, she started maybe there were some assumptions made because
like,
she's a
hey,
we're
we're gonna put a woman in, and
she should probably get it. But at the same time, like, she still is
a
there
shill.
at the behest of the powers that be. And so it's just really hard, I think, for some people with money at the top of this organization to admit that the failures of the men's game, which would have to be a step in saying the women need to get paid more.
Right. Right.
And I think when you talk about people that are unwilling to accept the failures of the men's game, John, we've got a perfect segue into who's running against. Who's our friend? Who's our good old buddy that's running against Cindy?
Nate, this one challenger, and this
And
is
just
where
one
the shit.
so far?
Yeah, just one. There's only one, and this is where the shit can't be. It sounds made up, but it's real. It's none other than the former president who was in his mind gracefully resigned due to how he handled the U.S. women's national team lawsuit so poorly that that person is none other than Carlos Cordero.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like, you can't make that shit up. Like, okay, let me unpack.
I mean,
this.
like I said, Carlos is the guy that basically got us to where we were, right? Right. When you think about, especially the approach to the women's game, Carlos Cordero, as the face of U.S. soccer, was
he made
the
it
one
all happen. Yeah,
that was shutting down any attempt by the women to get any for equal pay, for equal treatment, for any of that. Just in the end, completely shitting the bed and making U.S. soccer look a laughingstock in how they dealt with this, with the lawsuit from the women.
Yeah, he likely was the guy who's like, you can stay in a Motel 6, you have to fly commercial,
and you'll like it.
You'll like it. You can have bagels at the team meals, but you can't have anything to put on it. Like that type of shit. But anyways, Nate, under this turd's watchful eye, we not only on the men's side screwed up so many things and didn't qualify for our first World Cup since 1986, but he was a spearhead for all the awfulness that was the reason and the meat behind the discrimination and inequality lawsuit with the women, that ultimately just landed on Parlo Cohen's lap. Was like, fix this. Where I do give him credit is that he stated in disgrace, I take responsibility for the offensive, sexist, and misogynistic legal filings that degenerated the very same women's players lauded as excellent and visionary champions to young women aspiring to one day follow in their footsteps. So he said the right thing in his like opening statement for like his appointment, or for his platform. So give him that. Like, someone drafted that for him, like, clearly, and they're like, you have to say this. So he said it. But his recent remarks, he stated that he has spoken to each member of the U.S. Soccer Board of Directors, and they are unhappy with Parlo Cohen and how she's handled her time in charge. And the game, as well as the higher level leaders of U.S. soccer, are in dire need of change. Yeah, I would agree with that. But it doesn't mean that she fucked everything up, right? Like, you had a big hand in this. So there's a lot to unpack here. But let me boil it down to this. Who the fuck does this guy think he really is, Nate? Does he really like think and feel that all is forgotten in his only 2 years in charge? Like, he initially ran on a platform of change and got elected on a platform of change. And that was shown to be nothing of the sort, and relied heavily on shitting on Sunil Gulati, his predecessor, who, despite his own massive issues, was in charge of the golden age of soccer on both the men's and women's side. And I'll say that, caveat that, on paper. But Cordero pledged, if reelected, he aligned with what Parlo Cohen is already seeking, which is investing in all federation members, which that goes down to youth soccer, inclusive governance, hosting men's and women's World Cups in the United States, and ensuring equal pay, as he campaigns on those four core pillars. He then eroded in his initial statement from his campaign announcement by claiming that the U.S. Soccer would be withdrawing their bid from hosting the 2027 World Cup, but bidding hasn't happened yet. So he immediately, like, within his statement of like, I'm gonna run on this, totally backpedaled, like, nope, I didn't. No, we're not doing that. So great start, pal. So what is really new here, aside
What's the
from
difference? I mean, if he's saying I'm going to do the same thing that she's doing or that she wants to do,
right.
Where's the differentiator
There's
besides
nothing.
I screwed up?
There's nothing new. Besides kicking up the very dark past, a very dark period for the Federation at the time where we're really trying to move forward, and I don't get it. But I mean, like, go ahead.
It feels like, John, the difference is like there is this unspoken difference between the two, in that he's Carlos Cordero is coming back and saying, I'm all for everything she's for, but remember, I didn't fold to the women.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's that feels to me like the unspoken point that he is in his camp is making, which is pretty disgusting.
It is. And it's like he's I honestly, I don't know how this guy's got some big nuts, dude, to be able to think that, like, he can just, like I mentioned, he can just, like, jump back in and everyone's going to forget what happened, like. So my final thoughts on this are pretty simple. It is not the time from a sporting perspective to redo the same shit with the same people. And I think that's pretty clear, right? Like, not qualifying for the World Cup on the men's side, like, that was a big thing. Because in my opinion, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, but we should always get out of CONCACAF and qualify for a World Cup.
Be automatic.
Like, literally almost automatic.
Yep.
The whole stuff with the women's team is it, and I say disgusting because I can't find another word for it. It's just not great. And in the time we're living in, like, it's not the time where we should be going back to the 1950s, right? Like,
no,
we should be, like, when everyone else is watching the documentary that was put out and they're thinking, like, what the hell? Like, how can this be a thing? When everyone else outside of that boardroom is thinking that, maybe you should actually take a concerned effort in fixing it, right? Like, if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, it's a fucking duck, man. Like, there's no other way around it. So it's not the time to go backwards. I really believe that what's needed is that person that's totally different and maybe even, like, totally radical. We've seen it in other countries, at least on the men's side. On the women's side, it's kind of coming up in other countries. I look at England. England is doing it, I think, the right way. Canada also doing it the right way. Australia, France. And if you think about, like, how misogynistic the aura is around the French Soccer Federation, they've figured it out. We can figure it out. So you kind of need that radical person to come in that's totally different. One that has new ideas, but also willing to accept the fact that our soccer leadership in this country needs to be realistic about rebooting things, and stop being pretenders. Like, don't think that we're good. I mean, yes, we've won multiple World Cups on the women's side. We've won multiple gold medals in the Olympics, but we've done kind of fuck all on the men's side, except for one season where Bruce Arena caught lightning in a bottle and took us almost to the World Cup semifinals. So it's like, let's not pretend that we're this powerhouse of soccer. We truly aren't. So we need to really look at that shift of mindset, to stop being a pretender and understand that we are so way behind the successful countries on both sides of the ball, men's and women's, and do right by both sides. So don't think of one and not think of the other. Don't treat one different than the other. It's the same stuff. It's making sure that your players are well taken care of. It's making sure that you're focusing on the little things. It's making sure that you have a consistent quality pipeline from a youth perspective. It's all the same shit that Minneapolis City's doing. It's just a smaller scale, right? Like, we don't have a women's side, but we're looking at that. So learn from those who are out in front of the game, fix the massive problems that are in the youth soccer system, and work your way up cleaning the garbage. Is what I think. Like, start with the ground floor in youth, go to amateur, go to semi-professional, professional, national. That's the only way I see that we can move out of the shadows and really become the ones holding the spotlight.
Well, friends, that'll do it for tonight's show. As we embark on our 6th year already, it is time that we understand that you really don't listen to this part of the show, and you likely close whatever application you're listening to right now. So our new show close is going to be simple and quick and easy. Thank you for listening. Thanks to our wonderful show sponsor, footballstadiumprints.com. If you're in the market for supremely curated soccer-focused graphic design on anything from mugs to t-shirts, head over to footballstadiumprints.com and fill your cart. Don't forget to use the code CROWS10 for 10% off everything you purchase. And remember, all U.S. orders ship from right here in the United States, so there's no international shipping charges. If we've said it once, we've said it 198 times exactly. Minneapolis City is a 501c3, so consider getting that tax deduction through a charitable gift to the club to keep the ship we have built afloat. If you're interested in getting a hold of us, we've made it simple. You can hit the club up on Twitter at MPLSCitySC, through the show at The People's Pitch on Twitter, or via email mcscpodcast@gmail.com. And that's all for this week's hodgepodge of a show. I have been Nate. That was John. Hey, listen to John, man. Don't get COVID. It sucks. Because if you get COVID, you got hooked. Yeah.